Hi all, I wanted to show you how to create your own AI operating system locally on your computer that's cheap and fast and easy to maintain. So you might have used AI tools already if you're a product designer to create interfaces, or maybe Notebook LM to store and transform some of the research material. But what about the rest of your process? How can you introduce AI to the parts of your process that you want to speed it up, to uh, make the most of AI across the whole of your operations? By that, what I mean is, this is my process. So I won't go through all of this in detail. I can create a separate video on this if you're interested, but essentially from reviewing the strategy and the business needs through discovery of user problems, experimenting with solutions, delivery, through to monitoring the success of those shipped projects. You've got different activities that run through all of them, and you'll probably be quite familiar with all of these as well. So, for example, in discovery, user interviews. If you were to do this manually, it'd take quite a long time to go through and tag all of the interview notes. And if, like me, you use a framework like value proposition design, you want to form everything into jobs to be done, their pain points, and their gains. Now, you could use AI to do that automatically, to do that very quickly, very efficiently. And similar with the strategy phase, business opportunities. I go around the business and I try to find out, what is the business trying to solve for at the moment? Is there a step in the strategy that might not make sense on the face of it when you're looking at just a particular product in a narrow space and a narrow field of time? But if the business has got a certain need to build up monthly active users, for example, we may want to switch to focusing on that and use that as a focus point for all of the user research that comes up. Once we've got those business opportunities, we might want to rank them based on their potential to deliver value for the user. So there's lots of activities here. Some of them will be ripe for AI helping make them more efficient, more consistent. Others, you don't need AI. You don't need to throw AI at everything. So how do you actually go about creating this operating system? Well, the good news is all you really need to do is create a couple of files on your computer, create a couple of empty folders, and install one thing which is free called Obsidian. Now, Obsidian, what it does is it reflects these files and folders, and it's referred to as the vault in Obsidian language. This is going to create a persistent memory, so when you're using Claude Code, it's going to understand you, your goals, your business, your products, and it's going to connect all of that information together in a very powerful way. You won't need to re-explain this every time you interact with Claude Code or whichever agent you use. So here is my Obsidian, and here are the files on my computer. You can see they're the same reflected here. Let me just jump over to the Obsidian website, because the key thing about Obsidian and why we need it is that when you add information into these files and folders, or when Claude does, what Obsidian's going to do is it's going to draw connections between all of the bits of information, all of the data points within these various files. And it's going to become a lot more powerful than just having static files with information in it. So Claude no longer will just have to read through each of the files in your vault and infer the knowledge and information from it. It can use the graph to understand how each of the bits of information connect with each other, and then it can go in and just find the bits of information that are relevant. It can find the connections. It's much more powerful. It's much more efficient. So let's have a look at what it actually means to create these couple of files and folders. So what you'll do is you'll create a file called ClaudeMD, and I can share my ClaudeMD file and the SkillMD file to get you going, but just know you'll have to adapt them slightly for your particular needs. After creating these two files, I'll explain the next step, which is simply interacting with Claude, and it will create everything else for you, which is very quick, very efficient. So the Claude MD file is just telling Claude who you are, what your goals are, and it tells it about the Vault structure. It tells it about the folders, their purpose, where to save things, where to find information. So it's got all that context in there. This is what powers your agent to become very knowledgeable, very efficient, and give very predictable results. The skill MD file, that's going to be used heavily when you first set this up. This is going to tell Claude how to interact with you when it's trying to understand your process, your operations, or anything you want to tell it about. So in Claude, you're going to tell it to use the skill MD file, and then you're going to tell it about your end-to-end process. So basically what I showed you here, this is mine. It's very good. It's a good idea to have this kind of mapped out and clear in your own mind before you start interacting with Claude to tell it about this. But essentially in Claude, tell it to use a skill MD file and just start talking to it. It's going to ask you back and forth. It's going to ask you about system boundaries. It's going to understand the frequency that you use certain tools, how often you go through activities, the pain points with them, fragility, etc., etc. Within this file, it's a guide for Claude Code to really dig into the detail and understand exactly who you are and your process. So from that, it's going to start creating skills in the skills folder. Only when it's really confident it understands you and your process, it's going to start creating skills that will likely be one-for-one for these activities, but they may be more granular. It just depends how you've explained your whole process. It will go through and it will identify things that could be very useful for AI to get involved in and automate and help you through these various activities. So it will save these skills in the skills folder for reuse whenever it needs them. So we've got the Claude MD file that explains the Vault, explains how this all works. The skill MD file trains Claude on how to extract from you all the information it needs to understand your process. And you can also explain to Claude your business as well, your products, how the business operates, any pain points, any future phases, anything to know about your customers. All of that information, it's going to automatically start building a wiki. And this is where all the connections between the data come in as well. This wiki is going to understand you, your business, your products, how you like to work, and it's going to be there, sat and ready for Claude to take advantage of and understand with every interaction that you have with it. And again, it's going to be quite efficient about this because of those connections. It won't need to read all the information every time. You can just go in, understand what it needs to look up, and look that up and come back with that information. So it's quite efficient as well. So the way the folder structure works is that if you want to share any kind of files with Claude, you drop them into the raw folder. So you tell Claude what skill you want to use, you point it towards any particular file. So let's give you an example. You've run some interviews with users and you have the transcripts of those interview calls. Claude Code has created a skill which understands that when you give information about users, what you want is to code and format that information as jobs to be done, pain points, or any gains and benefits the user is looking for. It will digest that skill, the information you've put in the raw folder, which might be multiple hundreds of transcript files in theory, and it will convert all that information, use the context in the wiki, and it will output them all in the consistent format that you've told it to. That's great. You've got those files there. You can then use them for other skills. There may be other skills that ingest that information and then goes on to ideate, or maybe you're going to input business opportunities, and then it's going to take the output and then score them against what the business is trying to achieve, and then give you a ranked order of opportunities that are seen most valuable, highest bets. It could be, the output could be anything. Whatever you tell it your process is, that's what it will output. In addition to that, if you have any projects, if you're building interactive prototypes, for example, it will save those files in the projects folder. Or if you want to make all of what we've been talking about more accessible to people that maybe don't want to interact with Claude Code directly, they don't want to know about Obsidian or MD files, you can create a web page that allows them to upload files, trigger the skills, and then the output is just presented to them. So we can have a look at some examples there. If I go over here, here is a web page that I created, and for each skill that Claude has created based on my process, there is a card here. So if I just pick ingest opportunity, it's going to say what is the opportunity. Now I could just attach a file here, maybe a spreadsheet. It's got hundreds of opportunities written in there. Maybe you've got an internal portal that exports those, but let's just say I'm going to type in here what the opportunity is. It's going to check if there's any duplicates, but we don't need to fill that in. You could also add a source here as well. What it's doing now, just by clicking that button, is it's going into the skill file. It's looking up what the instructions are. It's going into the wiki. It's pulling out any context it needs, and then it's going to create this output file. So I click open in Obsidian. Here we go. I think that is in the output. There we go. Yeah, saved in output, planning, ingest opportunity. This is the file it's created based on that bit of text I input. Again, that could be a file that you've connected, a transcript file, whatever. It's got the, I've asked it to output an opportunity as a problem statement and a how might we statement, because I want to plow in loads of Slack messages, documents, spreadsheets that other people have shared with me, and I want it to output everything in this consistent format so I can use it in other steps of my process. Is an example of just one simple one. But again, it's taken us back to Obsidian, so that's very useful, but you can go a bit further. So here is this simple interface where each card is a skill. But if you wanted to build something that pulled all those skills together, you could build something a bit more in depth like this. And again, Claude Code has built this for me. I've been using Claude Code to build this. So initial setup of creating those couple of files and understanding my process and skills, it can then use that context to actually build operation tools to pull it all together. So again, add opportunity. Here's another way to add the opportunity, an alternative. Instead of this web page here, let's pretend we didn't make this. Instead, I'd click this button, put the text in, or attach the documents. And here's a whole bunch of problem statements it's written based on the information it's ingested, or the information gathered around the business. What does the business want? What are the salespeople here that users need? Maybe they're written as problem statements, maybe they're written as solutionized ideas, maybe there are many ideas all bundled together in one Slack message or email that are sent across. This pulls them out and writes them as problem statements and how might we's. In addition to that, one of the other things that one of the skills created was to understand what the business needs are, what its direction is. So in this example, data standardization, data modernization, automation for experts, and collaboration and external sharing are the things that the business is currently focused on, or rather this team is focused on within the business. That's what they're on the hook for improving, for pushing forwards. So what it's doing is it's saying, if we solve this problem, how likely are we to improve data standardization, improve data modernization, etc. It's scored every single opportunity and then put them in this ranked order. So we've got a bunch here, 5.8. If we scroll down, they get lower scores. So immediately we can see what are the likely highest bets that we can focus on if we were going to have a look at what the business wants to solve for. Then if we go through to discovery, this might take a few seconds, And again, this is just a quick prototype. The actual interface for this might need a lot of work. But from all those business opportunities that we've previously looked at on the other screen, we've selected a couple to shortlist. Now, I've gone ahead and for this one, I've uploaded a bunch of user insights. It's just loading at the moment, might take a few seconds. And what it's done is it's converted that, let's say for example, these were transcripts that I uploaded for user interviews. It's looked at the context of the problem to solve that the business is interested in. It's used the wiki to understand the products, to understand the business in general and any other constraints or opportunities that are within that wiki. And within the confines of that, it's looked at the user information I've given it, and it's pulled out what are their jobs to be done that relate to this, what are their pain points, what are their gains. And based on that, it's written a one-pager brief. So context, business problem, user problem, benefits, etc. So very quickly, we've gone from a bunch of unorganized information about what various teams around the business or the business as a whole wants to achieve. We've taken into account the strategic direction that's been given to the team, and we've overlaid that with user information, and it's pulled out this brief. Now, if you wanted to go even further, then if we hop over to experimentation, when this loads, we're going to see one of those business problems that has been chosen. I've already gone ahead and clicked the button to generate ideas, but what it's done is it's looked in the wiki and it's looked at how do our products already work. It's looked at any research that's already in the wiki about users, about what they like or dislike, and it's taken that in the context of this particular problem, and it's given a few different ideas for how we solve it. Now, should we use AI to take over the ideation process? Probably not entirely. Is it useful before going into ideation? That's up to you. That's up to your process and how you want to use AI. But hopefully, this example prototype operations tool can give you an idea of how you can start with just creating a couple of files on your computer and some folders and using them to interact with Claude to understand more about you and your business and your activities. It will create skills. It will ingest knowledge about your business, anything you drop into the raw folder. And then you can ask it to start building these tools that makes your life easier. Your team spend less time on the parts that it wants to automate. You can just hand it over to Claude using an interface like this, and they won't even need to use Claude Code or worry about Obsidian or MD files or anything like that. So that's how you go about it. You install Obsidian, create these two files. I can share you my versions of those as a starting point. Obviously, change them to be more personal to you and what you're trying to achieve. And then interact with Claude Code, and it will do the rest for you. Whatever these activities you want it to help out on, you ask it, it will build the skill, and then you can start either just dropping them into the raw file and doing it manually through Claude Code, or you can build an interface for other people to use very easily. Hopefully that's of some use, and let me know if you've got any feedback, and we'll create more of these videos to cover more in the future. Thanks very much.